The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Tonight on Politics Now, election night is just a few days away. We break down what you need to know on Decision Day and what we can learn from early voting numbers. Plus, a new 8 News Now Emerson College poll. What is on the voters' minds come Tuesday? And how the local FBI plans to make sure the election is safe and secure for voters.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langler. So Election Day is just 3 days away, and more Nevadans are taking advantage of early and mail-in voting. About half of the votes have been cast already. We spoke with Las Vegas Review-Journal politics and government editor Steve Sebelius to break down the early numbers so far.
There seems to be this flavor among Democrats I've spoken with that they seem nervous. Based on the numbers you're seeing and some of what's coming back in now, should they be?
Yes, absolutely. The Democrats should definitely be nervous. These numbers are not as advantageous for them as they could be. It's not as bad as 2014. In 2014, Republicans swept everything, won everything up and down the ballot. They were ahead in that. At this point, with early and mail voting only, at this point in the election, they were ahead by about 25,000 votes. In 2018, which was the most recent midterm election, the Democrats were ahead by about 21,000 votes. I'm estimating at this point, without the last day of early voting in hand, that Democrats are ahead by about 14,000 votes. So it's not as comfortable as it was in 2018, but it's not as bad as it was in 2014.
What are you seeing from maybe the independent voter and that sort of turnout, those early returns, and what does that say potentially about what we're looking at next week?
Yeah, this election will come down in large part to how the independents break in this election. If they break 60-40 for Republicans, it could be a very bad night for Democrats, or I should say a very bad 2 weeks, because we're going to have to count for a little while after the election. But if they break the other way for Democrats, then it could be not as bad as it otherwise would be. I think it's probably reasonable to expect a mixed bag on election night, Republicans winning some offices, Democrats winning other offices, and I think the independent vote will largely determine that, because the parties are pretty staid in their ways. They've got their base turning out, but a lot of it will come down to independent voters who have either left those political parties because they were sick of partisan politics, or who aren't really interested in partisan politics and how they approach issues, which could be completely different from how you would talk to your base voters.
Here we are now. It's the weekend. We're looking ahead to Election Day. You're Joe Lombardo, you're Adam Laxalt, you're Michael McDonald, you're in the GOP party, and you're looking at how things are shaping up right now. What are the expectations for Tuesday? What are the looking at numbers and crunching them down? Where do you put your emphasis? Where do you put your focus?
I think the Republicans have a very good chance in the governor's race. The pandemic and how the pandemic was handled by Governor Steve Sisolak affected a lot of people personally, and in some in a very negative way. So I would be sweating it if I was Steve Sisolak. If he wins that race, it will be by a very small percentage. I'm estimating that any statewide winner is going to win by fewer than 25,000 votes, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's not going to be a landslide. There will be no going away elections. Down ticket, though, I would worry, as we have seen in the Emerson College poll and other polls, I would worry about the large number of undecided voters in some of these constitutional offices. People don't really know their state treasurer. They don't know their state controller. They don't know, for example, what some of these jobs do. And the fact that they're just learning now, I think is going to be confusing for a lot of voters. It'll come down to name recognition. It'll come down to the ads that they've seen and whatever research they have done on those races. So I would, if I were the Republican Party, I'd be putting a lot of money into those down ticket races to try to boost turnout as well, in the hopes that that would also buttress the candidates at the top of the ticket.
Now, there are still some early mail-in votes that need to arrive at election headquarters and, of course, be counted. You can drop them off at any of the drop-box locations in Clark County. Based on 8 News Now Emerson College The Hill polling this week, Republicans are leading almost every major race in Nevada, and the gap's getting bigger. If that comes true next week, it would mark a major shift in state and national politics.
For Democrats trying to hold on to their political careers, the news is not good. The new 8 News Now Emerson College The Hill poll shows in the Senate, Republican challenger Adam Laxalt leading incumbent Democrat Senator Catherine Cortez Masto by 5 points, 50 to 45%. That marks an 8-point gain for Laxalt from our last poll in September. There's also been a big swing among the key Latino vote in Nevada. Laxalt leads Cortez Masto 54 to 41%. That's a huge change from September, when the senator led by 19 points. Congressional races follow a similar trend, with Republicans pulling ahead in all but one contest. In District 1, Congresswoman Dina Titus is behind Republican challenger Mark Robertson by 10 points. In District 3, Republican April Becker leads Democrat Representative Susie Lee 51 to 47%. Only in District 4 does Democratic incumbent Stephen Horsford hold on to a slim 3-point advantage over Republican Sam Peters. One major reason Democrats are struggling is the lack of support for President Joe Biden. 55% of Nevadans disapprove of his work. Just 40% support the president. In a hypothetical runoff with former President Trump, Mr. Biden would lose. It's been close since the primaries wrapped up. Governor Steve Sisolak trying to hold off Republican Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo. However, as the race has dragged on, polls show it's the challenger with the advantage. Our new exclusive 8 News Now Emerson College The Hill poll shows Lombardo leading by 4 points, 49 to 45%. Both candidates have gained since our last poll in September, and undecided voters are down to just 3%. Since our first poll in June, you can see how voters' moods have shifted. While Lombardo held steady before jumping up in October, Governor Sisolak has gone up and down. Polling also shows Governor Sisolak losing among Latino voters. In the race for the open Nevada Secretary of State post, just 2 points separate the main contenders. Republican Jim Marchant has 43%, Democrat Cisco Aguilar 41%. Democrat Attorney General Aaron Ford leads his re-election bid 45 to 40% over Republican Sigal Chattah. One thing which has stayed steady from the very beginning, though, the issues that matter most to Nevadans. As they vote this November, polling shows it's the economy on their minds. 46% say it's the top issue, with threats to democracy a distant second. As always, they're just polls. Only on November 8th do these numbers become real results.
And some reminders if you're going to vote in person on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th. Polls open at 7 o'clock in the morning. They will go until 7 o'clock at night. If you're in line before 7 p.m., you will get to vote. You don't have to go to a specific location either in Nevada. You can vote anywhere in Clark County, and you can do the same-day registration as well. Just make sure you bring a proof of address. We have all the information you need for Election Day at 8newsnow.com. Nye County's efforts to hand count its ballots took several twists and turns this week. 8 News Now was the only local television station to get a first-hand look at the process in Nye County, which was shut down. The ACLU is demanding now an investigation by the Secretary of State. It says an observer from the ACLU was removed by a woman who was legally carrying a gun, openly was carrying it. She removed the ACLU person from the ballot counting area, and 8 News Now witnessed this. The woman also demanded the ACLU observer turn over their notes. However, that woman doesn't work for Nye County. Instead, she's the vice chair of the Nye County Republican Party. Meanwhile, Nye County's hand count was shut down this week because workers were audibly saying the votes, and that violates state law on the early release of results. Nye County has sent a new list of procedures that would include tallying the results in silence. Well, many of you have written to us about some ads from a group called Citizens for Sanity. The GOP group's ads show some of the most high-profile crimes across America, including the recent stabbing on the Las Vegas Strip a few weeks ago. Ad Impact Polling reports they've spent $15 million on ads here in Nevada. That's close to a third of the group's total spending of $51 million all across the country. Next on Politics Now, bringing in the big guns, the high-profile surrogates helping Nevada Democrats leading up to the election, and what the FBI is doing to make sure the elections are safe and secure.
weekdays on CBS.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
This week, Democrats brought out high-profile candidates for some campaign help, and the headliner, former President Barack Obama. Victoria Saha was at Cheyenne High School, where he hosted a Democratic rally.
It was a packed house with voters coming out to see former President Barack Obama, who marked Las Vegas as one of his key stops around the country to encourage not only voting, but early voting.
Because this election requires every single one of us to do our part.
Both the former president and Governor Steve Sisolak touched one of the biggest issues at the center of the political spectrum, women's reproductive rights.
My opponent's as extreme as he gets. He supports a ban on abortions, wants to ban contraceptives.
And you deserve somebody who's going to stand up for a woman's right to make her own decisions about her body and her health care.
President Obama also focused on other key issues this coming election day, including gas prices, the need for affordable health care, and housing. The former president making it clear that he wants Nevada Democrats to continue fighting.
There may be a lot of issues at stake in this election, but the basic question that you should be asking yourself is who will fight for you?
Senator Catherine Cortez Masto was also on hand among other key Democrats. Audience members also got a performance by artist John Legend. Victoria Saha, 8 News Now.
In a statement, the Lombardo for Governor campaign said, as you see on your screen there, quote, "The sad reality is that Steve Sisolak would rather campaign with Californians and out-of-state politicians than fix the pressing issues facing Nevada." Republican gubernatorial candidate Sheriff Joe Lombardo cast his vote at Mountain Shadows Community Center this week, his wife Donna there as well. He remarked how easy it was to get in and vote. He said there was no line.
We're voting because we need some change here in the state of Nevada, and that's the reason why I'm running for governor, because it affects some change here in the state of Nevada. Well, we have to address the economy, we have to address the education system, we have to address our public safety. Those are the 3 tiers of my platform, and that's what I believe will bring Nevada back in the right direction as a state and within our great country.
Lombardo also said he felt the state of Nevada was doing a good job making sure the election is secure, and he says no one should stay home because of polling place fears. Democratic incumbent Governor Steve Sisolak was also up this week. He was early at voting locations in Clark County, and as you can see, he campaigned with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker on Thursday. Unfounded allegations of fraud and vote tampering clouded the 2020 election. Well, this year there's one big threat for federal law enforcement. 8 News Now investigator David Charnes spoke with the head of the FBI's Las Vegas field office about fighting misinformation and voter intimidation.
The undermining of the election integrity itself is by far the biggest threat.
FBI Special Agent in Charge, Spencer Evans, says the biggest threat to next week's election is misinformation and lies.
So the FBI is concerned because election integrity is at the center of what it means to be an American and to be able to have free and open and fair elections.
The FBI and its local and state counterparts are looking at several potential threats to undermine the election. They include voter intimidation, threats toward election workers, outside interference from a foreign power, and misinformation to suppress the vote. There's no credible information any of those actions are underway right now.
To the extent that they can be made safe, I am confident that the FBI and its partners have done everything possible to make fair and open elections a reality for all Nevadans.
As the 8 News Now investigators reported in August, an independent audit of the Clark County Election Department found no issues regarding how Nevada's largest county processes mail-in ballots from their creation to their tabulations. Evans did not comment on specifics about any threat nationwide or here in Nevada, but says the FBI is watching in these days to come, and they will be watching after Election Day.
Even though this environment is hypercharged politically, we need to make sure, and the FBI is committed to ensuring that the rule of law is followed and that we follow the facts wherever they lead us.
I'm David Charnes, 8 News Now.
Since 2020, the Department of Justice has worked harder to keep elections and poll workers safe. And if you see an issue, you should call the FBI's hotline, which is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Next on Politics Now, how national efforts to stop intimidation and how law enforcement says covering Election Day is different. We'll talk about that. Plus, we're going to break down the question that we're getting the most: how would ranked choice ballots work? This is Politics Now.
From all my heart.
You're watching Politics Now.
Well, this week, a judge in Clark County struck down a request by the Republican National Committee that tried to make Clark County election officials hire more Republican poll workers. The decision took place earlier this week, of course. The judge says the judge says they didn't violate any rules in hiring temporary poll workers to verify signatures on mail-in ballots. A state law requires equal partisanship. Clark County argued it isn't a partisan job, so hiring wasn't based on party. The ballot question we get asked about the most in this election season is question 3. It would put in place open primaries and ranked choice voting. Well, supporters say this would involve more voters in the process. Both political parties, though, oppose it. They say it would just confuse voters. So here's an explainer of how ranked choice voting would work.
First, it creates an open primary, meaning you can vote for anyone on the ticket. Right now, you can only vote for Republicans if you're a Republican or Democrats if you're a Democrat. The top 5 would then go on to the general election. In the general election, you would rank them 1 through 5. If someone gets more than 50% in the general election, they win. If no one gets 50%, it goes to an instant runoff. The candidate with the fewest votes gets eliminated. Their second choice gets their votes, and that continues until someone has 50%.
Just a little explainer there as we head to the ballot boxes. Meanwhile, now back to protecting the elections. As you heard earlier, the FBI is concerned about voter intimidation. Washington, D.C. correspondent Alexander Limon looks at what's being done around the country.
Some officials are concerned about what they see as a growing trend of self-appointed poll watchers going beyond peaceful observation.
Being nearby a box armed or dressed in such a way in tactical or military type clothing that can create intimidation or concern for people dropping off ballots.
Justin Smith is an elected Republican sheriff in Larimer County, Colorado. Smith says he felt compelled to join the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections because of the rise in voter and poll worker intimidation.
The vile nature of these comments, the explicit threats.
Smith and other government officials say the goal of these tactics is to discourage voting or to pressure election officials into changing results. The threats are driving many experienced election workers to quit. While laws vary state by state, Smith says if an action seems inappropriate, there's a good chance it's also illegal.
In Colorado, for example, people are prohibited from having an open firearm and unconcealed within 100 foot of any sort of voting location.
Smith blames the problems on extreme political polarization that he says is driven by misinformation that spreads widely on social media.
Our elections have been, something that's really sacred to us on either side. When you lose an election, you've lost an election, and you move on and you honor that.
In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Alex Limon joining us from Washington. Alex, let's continue the conversation here about safety around the elections. You mentioned that the sheriff works with the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. Can you tell us more sort of about what that is and what they do?
Yeah, definitely. So the goal of that committee is to bring law enforcement and election workers and poll workers together to start off these conversations about safety and how to improve it. And so actually Sheriff Smith told me that until he joined that committee, he didn't realize just how bad this problem is. And, so he's having one-on-one conversations with poll workers and election officials from all around the country and just hearing just how awful, how direct these threats are against them and how scary they are for them and why it's driving so many poll workers away from that industry. And so it's a really important committee that kind of brings these two entities together, law enforcement and then the election side of it, so that they can better understand each other, better know how to work with each other to improve security, things like that.
What can specifically they do to make sure that Election Day and leading up to Election Day is safe and secure?
Well, this sheriff in particular, he's from Larimer County, Colorado, and he said that this whole experience has been eye-opening. And he said that, for example, in his county, when law enforcement officials go through the academy, for example, they learn about things like traffic laws in general, or obviously murder, different kinds of laws, court proceedings even, because officers have to testify. But one big thing that they didn't learn about, at least in his experience in his county, was election laws. And he says that's just so important. And they're so complex and so, detailed, just depending on the state you live in or the county you live in, even taking photographs of people walking in and out of polls, that could be illegal because, voters are supposed to be able to remain anonymous.
And that was Alex Limon there. In Nevada, a reminder, there is a state law that prevents you from posting a filled out ballot online. It's illegal to post a selfie, for example, on Election Day with who you voted for filled in.